Hello and welcome to our IG Live. We are going to be talking to author Maryann Jacob Macias about her new book, Nisha Knows Best. Hello. A lot of you may know her for her previous book, Teo's Tutu, and so now we will get to talk to her about that. And if you're not able to, hello.
Hi.
Hi. I'm just saying, if you're not able to watch the whole thing, don't worry. It will be up on Instagram and later on our YouTube channel. Good to see you again.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. Like we talked about before, I mean, you've been a supporter of Read Your World for a long time. Plus, I was a big admirer of Teo's Tutu, and now I've had a chance to read Nisha. Am I saying that right, Nisha?
hmm
Nisha Knows Best is such a great book, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Me
And
too.
why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what your journey was to becoming an author?
So my name is Maryann Jacob Macias. I'm the author of Teo's Tutu and Nisha Knows Best. My journey to becoming an author, oh boy, this is a heavy one because it started in middle school. Um, I was very bullied in middle school, starting the first day of sixth grade and the last day of eighth grade. And one of the ways I got through those 3 years was by journaling.
Oh.
And I think it was that very first week, I was the new kid. I went to a K through 8 school, and first day of sixth grade, kids looked at me and saw fresh meat. And yeah, so that's what it was. And I think it was that first week. Right after school, I walked into CVS and walked up and down the journal aisles and looked for the most obnoxiously pink or lavender, because that was my phase at the time, and just started filling it with all my feelings. And I would just come home and recount each day. And after a while, I started taking the day and turning it around into what I wish the day had been.
Mm.
So that's when I started, taking my lived experience and turning it into these fictional stories. I was always the hero. The bullies were the villains, of course. Um, but yeah, that's how it started. Writing for me has always been a source of healing and a place of possibility.
Well, I hate that you went through that, but what a great way to deal with it.
hmm
I mean, the journaling, and then you can see how that leads into doing picture books. And you say that you are always want to write about courageous, inspiring young people. Why are you particularly drawn to those stories? Maybe from your own experiences?
I didn't feel particularly courageous at the
Mm,
time. Um, but I do think that courageous young people have this very clear sense of what's right and what's wrong. And I
mm,
think at the time I did have that. I mean, I wasn't courageous in that I didn't have um, the confidence to speak up for myself. I kind of internalized a lot of it and poured it onto the page. But especially nowadays, I see how, young people are so outspoken and, really good about speaking up for themselves and advocating for themselves. And I think we really need that. And the younger it starts, I think the easier it is as you get older to really speak up for yourself, stand up for yourself, and express what you need.
right. And I do want to focus on Nisha Knows Best, your new book, but got to touch on Teo's Tutu, which is such a
Mhm.
great book and was so well
Thank you.
received.
Thank
And
you.
in an interview with NPR, because it was featured on NPR, you said that the book tells readers you're magnificent and you deserve to show up as your best self. Why is it so important for kids to get that message from an early age?
I mean, I think that feeling of wanting to belong, that sense of
Mm,
belonging is so ubiquitous, right? I think it starts at a really young age, and certainly in middle school and high school, young adulthood, and certainly in older adulthood, right? When there are just high chances of more isolation. I think that feeling of wanting to be part of something bigger just is always there. And
mm,
for me, that earliest feeling was in my little preschool dance class.
right.
Um, but at the same time, I didn't always feel like I physically fit into the class.
Mhm.
And so as I was thinking about the book and drafting the book, I thought, well, one of the fun things writing for me is taking my own experience and putting like a twist on it or a spin on
Right.
it. And I thought, well, what is a way that someone who doesn't have my experience, who has a different experience, could resonate with this story? And then I thought about boys and dance.
Right.
And I know that as the classes get older, the number of boys in the class can really dwindle. And I thought about what that could look like. And I wanted to write a little boy who just showed up absolutely loving dance and doing it the way that he wanted. And I really love that books can,
Yes.
I mean, those colors and the illustrations. I really love thinking of books as a soft place for boys to land. That's one of my soft spots.
I love that, because that was interesting when I read about how you were inspired to write the story that was from your own experience, but then you decided to kind of do maybe the parallel journey of a little boy who, I feel like in some ways there's more space for girls to do things that are perceived as traditionally masculine versus the other way around. I think there's a lot more stigma attached to that. So I love that you do that. And talking about your new book, tell us all about it and what your inspiration was on this one.
So this book was inspired by my big fat Indian family. Very big and loud and boisterous and loving, very affectionate. And I thought about myself at a young age and how sometimes,
Yes, I love these.
lots of cheek pinching and belly pinching and, little things like that, which were always meant, to be loving and an expression of affection. But, as a kid, I didn't have the language to say, not today, or, I just didn't have that at the time. But I do see that young people have that these days. And I thought a lot about the progression from when I was Nisha's age to now. And I just really wanted to explore, that could easily have been my living room when I was 7 or 8 years old. My parents and my aunts and uncles were always throwing parties. It was a great way to grow up. And I also wanted to write an homage to my own grandparents, who I really only saw 3 or 4 times in my life because they lived in India. Right. And so, of course, we didn't have FaceTime or Zoom or any of those things. And it wasn't that easy for a family of 5 to travel to India regularly. So I wanted to, again, reimagine what it could have looked like.
Right. Well, I want to go back to that because I'm interested in the fact of I mean, I think this is a book that any child could pick up and relate to. A lot of the issues are very universal, but it is a kind of a very specific cultural context. But we'll come back to that. First, I love how the book, it not only models how kids can advocate for themselves, but I think really is something that a lot of adults can learn from, about how the adults in this book give her space to kind of figure things out for themselves herself. So what do you want readers to take away from this book?
I mean, really, for me, it's about unconditional love. And I know that can sound very big and broad, but I certainly understand that there can be resistance to honoring kids' requests, right? Like that, because maybe out of respect for elders or these cultural norms and traditions that we've grown up with, but that can easily come across as conditional love, right? Like, oh, if you don't do this, they may not love you. And I think we have to be really careful of that. I also think that it's our responsibility as caregivers to bring our elders along on these journeys with us, to have these conversations and to not leave them in isolation, like when we're thinking about how we want to raise this next generation of young people. And that's why I wrote the story the way I did, because Nisha's parents actually agree with her in the end, right? Like, sorry, spoiler. But, in this really loving way, they surprise her. And it's the other relatives who think that she might be a little rude for not automatically running to hug them.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Like I said, I mean, it's a specific context, and here the grandparents are visiting from India, and she mainly knows them through Zoom or FaceTime and hasn't met them in person. So she's feeling really shy, and she's worried that if she doesn't hug them or she doesn't show love in how they expect it, that they might leave and go back to India, or thinks she doesn't love them. So do you think having that kind of physical distance, where they don't get to see the grandparents that often, kind of puts more pressure on these interactions? And like you said, also specifically the older generation, where there's this fear that they won't understand, that they'll think you're being rude. How does that kind of change the dynamics in the story?
I mean, I think it's so much of what Pooja said earlier, right? Like
Mm.
that the multitude of kids' emotions like deserve to be honored and recognized.
Mhm.
Um, and again, flipping things around a little bit, that that particular piece of the story came from one of the few times I did travel to Kerala to visit my grandparents, and it was muggy and hot, and there were mosquitoes everywhere, and it was just generally very uncomfortable. And I was a kid and complaining a lot, and like sometimes the food was too spicy for me, and and I looked like this very spoiled and rude kid, but I felt pretty uncomfortable and out of my element at times. But I was also so excited to finally have a chance to spend time with my grandparents and bond with them. I grew up with my classmates often getting picked up from school by their grandparents, and I just like
Mm.
yearned for that so much. And so never really having had that relationship with my own, that's what the story is, right? It's reimagining what that could have looked like.
Mhm. So it's interesting. As on one hand, I think parents sometimes feel in the middle. They're trying to honor their children's feelings, but they also have to worry about their parents' feelings. But in this case, the grandparents, they seem pretty cool with it. Like they seem to go along with it. And one of it is one way that happens. They show in the book is that Nisha learns there's more than one way to show your love, and so she finds her own way to do that, but has to have space for it. So how do you think that, like, the adults? I mean, as a parent, I'm reading it like maybe a different way than a child would, but how do you think the adults kind of model how to kind of manage both ends of the spectrum, or both generations there?
Well, one thing that was really important for me was her
Mm.
mom coming into her room and telling her that it's okay. And
Mm.
also kind of holding herself a little bit accountable that maybe she should have had that conversation with her parents before they arrived. It's
Mm.
not often that kids get to hear adults apologize to them,
Um,
right? And I think that that is a really good feeling for a kid to read on the page.
right.
Just this acknowledgement that, oh yeah, I should have done that for you. Yeah.
Yes. And I think it's interesting. I love a book like this because I think that a lot of times adults, as you mentioned, they don't really respect kids' requests, and sometimes kids are not able to even verbalize it. But if they seem to be holding back and shy, they don't necessarily respect their boundaries. They say, "Oh, it's okay. Just they love you. It's all right." Yeah, and they want to show love in the way that they know how. And yet there's the connection between this and when we talk about consent, we're usually talking about older years like teens or adults. But what's the connection? Why between making sure kids know that they can honor their boundaries and they can speak up for themselves at this young age, and then how they might how they might see consent at an older age?
Well, I don't think it's ever too early to teach. Not, I mean, I hesitate to use the word teach. Let me say, maybe model or
Mm.
make normalize consent. I think for me, I want to be a trustworthy adult for the
Mm.
young people in my life and the kids in my life. And so that goes both ways, right? If I want them to trust me, then I need to earn their trust. And,
Mm.
for me, regardless of age, trust needs to be earned. Like it's not automatically granted.
Mhm. And you've talked before about how important representation is in children's books. So why is it particularly meaningful to have this book centered around this big, loving South Asian family?
Well, specifically, my family is Malayali from Kerala, and there's not a lot of representation
Mm.
of Malayali families in children's books. And although that is changing, which is, really wonderful to see. So that's really just what it was. Although,
Mhm.
samosas, everyone knows what that is, and it's delicious. So I just sort of made that the, the tie to bring it all together.
Right. And so, when you're creating a book like this, how do you go about thinking about how to talk about this with kids and kind of terms that they might understand, making it kind of age appropriate?
I love doing school visits, and one of my first questions is, who likes big parties?
Mm,
Hands will go up. Who likes smaller parties? And then it kind of moves into, well, who likes hugs and who likes handshakes? And then
mhm.
it usually kind of takes off on its own.
Right.
Pretty amazing.
What kind of reaction have you gotten from readers about this book?
Um, Readers have a lot of questions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have a lot of questions, which is great because questions, the more questions, the better.
Mhm.
Um, I think the number one question I get is, why do they want to hug her?
Mm.
And I
This is
said,
what kids are asking.
yeah, like, why do they want to hug
Yeah.
her? It's, well, it's her family, and a lot of people show their love by hugging, right?
Mhm.
And then it will be like, well, I like hugs, or I don't like hugs. And then it
Mhm.
becomes a whole other conversation.
Right.
It really does take flight on its own.
But I love that because that just shows that it really helps kids open up this conversation to talk about whether you love hugs or whether you don't, and maybe how to talk to adults about that. Um, and so, I mean, you mentioned how this could have been like your living room growing up. So, what was your reaction when you saw these illustrations? Because they're so wonderful. And first, just small things like diversity of skin tone and
Mhm.
body type and just the love that comes through and all of these images. Did you have much interaction with the illustrator, or did you just see them kind of when the illustrations were done?
I saw them a little bit throughout the sketch process, and I just thought they were perfect. I mean, I think Maithili, was absolutely on point, and I couldn't have picked um, a better artist. I think the illustrations match the text
Mhm.
perfectly.
Yeah,
I
it's
love the speech bubbles. It gives a very, active vibe to all the conversations. Yeah.
yeah. I thought that was interesting to have the speech bubbles in there. I love that. Um, so tell us, this has just come out.
Mhm.
Do you have other projects that you're working on that you'd like to give us a preview of, or I don't know how much you can say about?
It's very, very preview, but I'm dabbling in a young adult novel right now.
Oh, that's one thing I'd love to ask when people are known for picture books.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about doing a different age group? So young adult, that's a big leap. How has that been for you?
I actually got my MFA writing a young adult novel, and then it's just so funny how things happen, right? Like, I just wrote the picture book and said, let's see, and that's the one that was acquired first. And so it'll be interesting to see what it's like with the young adult novel, but I've just started drafting it, so it's got a ways to go.
Do you think that you'll go back to do picture books in the future, or?
I have a concept that's sort of swirling around in my head.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, we will keep an eye out for that and be sure to share about it in our stories. If you're joining us late, this is going to be on Instagram and later on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much. It was so fun to talk with you today.
I love this conversation. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for being on here. And thanks to all of you for watching. And we'll see you again next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.